Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. Given that tonight, as of the time of this video's release, the world's biggest pro wrestling company is hosting its second biggest event of the year, I thought I would take another dip into my interest in pro wrestling and explore the biggest missed opportunity of said pro wrestling company over the past 15 years. And I thought I would do that in the form of a how I would video. Yeah, sorry, my keyboard does that sometimes. In this case, how I would have booked the Nexus. The Nexus, which a lot of people, which a lot of people even at the time said it was one of the most interesting things that that the WWE did, and it had a lot of momentum going for it when it started. It's basically these guys who are let's see, Skip Sheffield, Justin Gabriel, David Otunga, Michael Tarver, Wade Barrett, leader, Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel. Okay. In case you're wondering, Otunga is the second in command, and I think it would be fair to call Gabriel the third in command, even though he actually functions more as the chief enforcer, so to speak. As in, he's the athletic guy and the one who's more or less earmarked to be to be the future star. All of them are supposed to be future stars, but Gabriel perhaps and Gabriel perhaps more so, being prepared for being prepared more for his future. But anyway, that's beside the point. That's beside the point for now. For now, the point is that you get these guys here who were slated to be the were slated to be the next big thing in pro wrestling. These guys were supposed to be this next generation that would define the that would define the makings of the company moving forward. That was that was the promise they made, and that was what a lot of people were hoping for as they as they made their mark. That potential, however, was not fulfilled, and the primary reason that potential was not fulfilled actually occurred at SummerSlam 2010, when this team fought against a team from a team more or less that was more or less handpicked of various WWE superstars in order to face off against them, and these guys lost, even though basically everyone said they should have won, and because of that, they were never really taken as seriously as they potentially could have. Even though PWI named named the resulting storyline the feud of the year, the PWI is not necessarily a very reliable source when it comes to discussing pro wrestling storylines and such. Even though they talk about it primarily from an in-universe perspective, not necessarily an out-of-universe perspective, as in terms of how it is that they are effectively capable of communicating themselves and what it is they present. They go more from an in-universe perspective of wins matter the most, even though, as we all know, wins are predetermined. Aside from that, I am perhaps not the first guy to think about how the Nexus could have been improved. And in fact, there is actually quite an obvious first step, one that starts right at SummerSlam 2010, namely have them win the match, have them get over that that pre-established team of WWE guys, have them have them have them go over, have them showcase that they are there to stay. But beyond that, there is no, there's still plenty of gray areas, and it is these gray areas that I want to fill out, and that is what this video is going to do. Aided by various images, I'm gonna give you my rundown on the Nexus storyline from SummerSlam 2010 to Survivor Series 2010, more or less. Maybe with a little bit of an epilogue after that. Okay, so with that out of the way, and I'm not actually done with all my disclaimers. So, in case you're wondering, I'm not gonna look at the entire WWE and really trying to rebook everything. I am just looking at this particular storyline and how I think that should have gone. So if you're wondering, so if I mention someone and then that someone doesn't appear in the video anymore, it's because the reason why they don't is because they're no longer relevant to the storyline or they've been cut out somehow. Also, I am making some assumptions. Assumption number one is that Skip Sheffield doesn't get injured and that Michael Tarver stays in the group for throughout the entirety of my video. I have some thoughts on how that goes. Anyway, I think I'm done with the preliminaries. Anything else I need to establish, I'll talk about as we progress through the video. So, with that out of the way, it's time I actually start. Again, I am assuming that the Nexus wins the SummerSlam match, which in turn leads to everything, which in turn will lead to a whole bunch of other things changing over the course of the next week. The first Raw after SummerSlam, these guys come out again, and Wade here talks about how they are now established. They are now the guys. They now need to be considered, acknowledged, etc. And also because Wade won the contest that all of these guys took part in before they formed the Nexus. He says that he's going to and therefore won a world championship opportunity. He says he wants to cash that in at the next pay-per-view, which, if I am not mistaken, is Judgment Day. I might be mistaken. Anyway, the first pay-per-view after SummerSlam. When he says that, out comes Chris Jericho, who was in that team of WWE guys, and alongside him, all the other team members of that team come out as well, aside from John Cena, who we'll get to later over the course of the evening. And he says, yeah, okay, you've been able to beat us, but that only tells me that you can work well together. This is not a team sport, or this is not primarily a team sport. You have to prove yourselves individually competent as well. So you really have to face off against the team members one-on-one, and really, in order to really be put for your paces and really stand out. And Wade Barrett accepts that challenge on behalf of the entire team, and pretty much every Nexus member has an individual match against a member of that WWE team. You will notice that this is the same thing that happened in the in reality, but now the framing of the of this part of the storyline has changed. And now, rather than the Nexus trying to hang on to their relevancy, this is the Nexus going on what is basically a victory lap, showing that they fully deserve to be there, showing that they have a sizable and meaningful repertoire and capabilities that needs to be considered. And just like last time, all of the members win except for I got Darren Otunga here. Don't know. Oh yeah, I'm gonna David. I got David Otunga here. He's gonna be part of this story later. All of them win except for this guy right at the end here, Darren Young, who has a match against John Cena, and even though in this in my storyline, Cena is still a little bit more beat up than he was in the in a regular storyline. Uh, John Cena still wins. After Cena's victory, the rest of the Nexus comes out to beat him down, and then all of them celebrate together for having for having decisively proven that they are that they are also individually better than some of the top guys within the roster. There is, however, or so it would first appear, because Darren Young, the guy who just lost, will end up getting a beatdown by every other member of the Nexus, except for David Otunga, who stays out of it. This establishes the first fracture within the team, a fracture that will go on to have some greater degree of relevance. And that fracture is actually explored in the very next episode of Raw, where Wade Barrett accuses him of challenging his authority. To which David will say, "I am fine with your authority, but we shouldn't take our own numbers out. We shouldn't limit the powers. The power we can wield. So therefore, we should not turn against each other. We should not physically turn against each other. We should not attack our own." And the anonymous Raw general manager, because this is the anonymous Raw GM era, sees this and decides to do a little bit of shenanigans, because as already mentioned, Wade plans to cash in his opportunity for the World Championship of Raw. However, there is technically another contender, namely Randy Orton, whose last match for the title ended in a draw. So the anonymous Raw GM creates sets out a match for, on the one hand, reigning champion Sheamus with David Otunga, and on the other hand, Wade Barrett and Randy Orton. This tag team match is going to be the main event. And during that main event, these teams would go at each other for the most part, but Barrett and Otunga, importantly, don't really try to fight. They are more interested in helping their partners soften up their other partners. And if something happens to either of them because of either Sheamus or Orton, they don't really care. Eventually, however, Sheamus and Orton notice that, and they contrive to have these two in the ring together so that they have to fight. When they do that, however, the rest of the Nexus comes out and jumps them, and it showcases that even though there is some dissent among the Nexus ranks, they will still stick together against outside forces, at least for now. Okay. Now the third Raw after SummerSlam starts with, as I mentioned, Randy Orton, that the guy who was the contender, and was somewhat snubbed by Bear's decision. He would come out and complain that he should get his opportunity first, not Barrett. Anyway. Doesn't matter if he complains; he still doesn't get it. At least not the first pay-per-view after SummerSlam. Next up, in the third Raw after SummerSlam, opens up with John Cena, who led that WWE team that lost against Nexus, and he holds a promo basically saying, "I failed. I should have been able to, I should have stopped. I should have stopped these guys, and I couldn't." and in spite of that, I'm still ready to go at it again. And and when he says that, out comes Daniel Bryan, who, funnily enough, was initially a Nexus member, but was then um kicked out of the group. Initially he was actually fired by the WWE because of the way because of what he did in the attack that helped cement the Nexus. I he he choked a guy out with his tie, but he was eventually brought back brought back into the company by the WWE, and he said, and he joined the WWE team uh, as a way to sort of atone for the initial attack. And he's right up there with John Cena, telling him, uh, telling him that he still has Brian's full support. And when he says that, out comes Chris Jericho again, saying that Cena has had his opportunity, and now the efforts against the Nexus have to go through him, have to go through Jericho. Out comes Edge, who says the same thing. Out comes John Morrison, who says the same thing. But out also comes The Miz, who was actually who actually did volunteer to join John Cena's WWE team, and and he has been refused because, I don't know, reasons. But the important thing of note here is that, as you can see, he holds both the Money in the Bank and the United States Championship, both of which will become relevant a little bit later. Anyway, these six guys, and by six guys I mean Jericho, Edge, John Morrison, The Miz, Cena, and Bryan, decide okay, we'll fight together. At which point the Nexus comes out and says, you know what, we've already got bigger fish to fry. We don't need to Night of Champions. That's the name of the next pay-per-view event. So anyway, as I was saying, um, Wade Barrett comes out and says that the Nexus in general has bigger fish to fry than having to fry them again. So they'll just handle them. So they'll just handle this team quickly, and therefore the main event for this Raw is set in place, a 6v6 Nexus versus WWE. Somewhat of a SummerSlam rematch, but not really. The important thing here is that the match takes place. Team WWE loses again, but importantly, it is Miz who eats the pin. And the guy who pins him, yeah, I already mentioned, John Morrison is already coming out, and the guy who pins him is Justin Gabriel, the previously mentioned enforcer of the Nexus, because that gives him the United States Championship title opportunity at Night of Champions, the next pay-per-view. And as such, it turns out that Night of Champions is will be a pretty busy night for all the Nexus guys. Because on one hand, you have Wade Barrett fighting for the world title, you have Justin Gabriel fighting for the U.S. title. Then you also got, let's see, oh yeah, Michael Tarver and Heath Slater fighting for the tag team titles. There's gonna be a tag team turmoil match with several, which is basically a gauntlet elimination match. And I think it would make sense to also include John Cena and Daniel Bryan in that match, and have them be one of the teams that these guys knock out. Maybe even the only team. Who knows? But additionally, I also want David Otunga to fight against Randy Orton, because there is a little bit of a leadership contention within the Nexus. So if Wade has a match, I think it makes sense to also give David a match, and allow both of them to prove themselves. However, David would have Skip Sheffield in his in his corner, and I kind of want and I want David Otunga to win, but only with Skip Sheffield's interference. It could be minimal, but it has to be present. And anyway, it would be safe to say that Night of Champions ends up being a massive success for the Nexus, because aside from David Otunga's victory, these guys also win the tag team championships. Justin Gabriel wins the U.S. title, and Wade Barrett ends up winning the world title. Next up, well, I need to look ahead a little. Oh yeah. Next up on the Raw after Night of Champions, Wade Barrett comes out to give a self-congratulatory promo about how he has arrived and how the Nexus has done great things and have already cemented themselves under his leadership. And then he calls out David Otunga to to kind of badmouth him on his poor showing, on the fact that he had to enlist Skip's help in order to win. To which David replies, "Hey, we stick for each other. We stick for each other. We work together. This is what we do. This is what we do. This is how we gain success." Barrett remains somewhat unimpressed because he was able to become a world champion without external interference, and so he decides that Otunga should have another match against Orton that very night. At which point the Raw general manager comes in and adds some stipulations to the match. If Orton wins, he gets added to the World Championship rematch that will happen at Hell in a Cell in 2 weeks' time. If Otunga wins, however, Barrett will basically have first choice for when it comes to the kind of match that he, when it comes to the kind of match he wants to have against Sheamus, because yes, Sheamus will be, because there will be a title rematch between Barrett and Sheamus set for Hell in a Cell, or at least that's how I think of it. That match goes forward, but however, before it can begin, the guys from Team WWE show up and surround the ring. They're not necessarily at ringside, but they are on or next to the barricades to make sure that the Nexus doesn't interfere in this match. So this match then takes place, and I kind of want Otunga to lose, but by disqualification. I'm not sure if that disqualification will be by hitting Orton in his crotch, or by slamming the ref away. I can pretty much say that one of these methods, though, slamming the ref away, would actually lead to the match being declared null and void, and no additional stipulations being coming upon Wade's Wade's first championship defense. But regardless of what happens, the Nexus still interferes, and Team WWE still tries to go at them, except for let's see if he's up next. No, he's not. But yeah, I already talked about him, so it makes sense to have his photo here. But still, there is one guy who doesn't come up within the. There is one Team WWE guy who doesn't come up in the fight against Nexus, and that is The Miz. Maybe because he's been a little too scared to deal with it, and it is within that beatdown that Chris Jericho actually ends up being written off. He already has some. He has some kind of. He has some other engagements he has to deal with. So it is in this moment that he gets the thing that gets him. That he goes through the thing that gets him written off for the rest of the story. As the next match, and then on the next edition of Raw, the Miz is confronted by Edge and Cena, who are basically the de facto co-leaders of this group. Now that Chris Jericho has been written away, and they ask him, why it is that he actually chickened out, that he should have gone for it. To which the Miz would reply, "Hey, he's still the Money in the Bank holder. It is still directly relevant for him that he it is still regularly relevant for him that he stays out of the fighting. He has to he has to save himself, save his capabilities." And Edge listens to that and goes, "Bullshit. You really have to step up, and you're gonna do that tonight in a match against in a one-on-one match against Wade Barrett." Which is exactly what happens. Only at one point and I think Barrett is gonna win this, and yeah, I think he's gonna win cleanly. Also, I made my decision. The match between Otunga and Barrett that I previously mentioned, it would end with it would end in a no contest after the ref gets messed with. But anyway, the main event for next week's Raw, for the following week's Raw, the one between Wade Barrett and The Miz, it would end with Barrett's victory, and then after that, the Nexus would come out in order to give The Miz a beatdown. However, the rest of Team WWE walks in alongside Randy Orton, who ends up replacing Jericho in Team WWE, and that additional momentum, that additional firepower allows them to allows Team WWE to overcome the beatdown of the Nexus. That being said, the matches slated for Hell in a Cell remain basically the same. They are namely Nexus leader Wade Barrett still has his rematch against Sheamus. Next up, Justin Gabriel has his title rematch against. Does he have his title rematch against The Miz? Yeah, let's say he does. And I also think it would make sense to have Michael Tarver and Heath Slater defeat Daniel Bryan and John Cena in a full official tag team match. Simple, no frills tag team match. Just two guys against two guys, and these two guys, Tarver and Slater, end up winning it. Yeah, as I was saying. And yeah, that's the and those are the standings for the Nexus going into the road to bragging rights. I'm not gonna go into how the storyline between Hell in a Cell and bragging rights unfolds, but I will say that I can give you my thoughts on what the upcoming storylines should be. Namely, Wade Barrett will have a title match against Randy Orton, and the other Nexus guys with titles will basically have interpromotional matchups. So that means Justin Gabriel goes on a little tear again, has his match against Dolph Ziggler from SmackDown, the IC champion, and ends up winning. And I also think Michael Tarver and Heath Slater should win against Dashing Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre from SmackDown. that's how those storylines are gonna go. and uh, and yeah, so those storylines are gonna go. And then by the end, and then at the in the main event of the show would once again be Wade Barrett defending his title, but this time it'll be against Randy Orton. And I want this match to be very back and forth, very hard fought, with Barrett ultimately winning, only for I came to play to start playing, and which means that The Miz cashes in his Money in the Bank title and ends up defeating Wade Barrett, becoming the becoming the Raw World Champion. If I'm not mistaken, Raw held the World Heavyweight Championship at the time, so that's was it WWE? Anyway, one of those. And The Miz ends up. The Miz ends up and ends up becoming Raw's World Champion. At the next Raw, it's Otunga who holds the holds the leader's speech about how effective his team is and how good they have been at and how good they have been and how they've proven that they can fight off basically anybody even from SmackDown, and therefore they stand out. Wade Barrett will try to come out now and contradict him, because that was not his merit, because he has no right to talk about it, because he's not the leader. Otunga, however, would flip that on him, reminding him that he is no longer world champion. He has lost. And therefore has no further standing. At which point, Husky Harris and Michael McGillicuddy come out, and Wade is like, let's not get too let's not get into any discussions about who really deserves what. They do not benefit us. They do not benefit us. And they decide to once again, at least for now, become stay a united front. And after that point, the next storylines that emerge are going to be about how going into Survivor Series are Wade Barrett invoking his championship rematch clause in order to face off against The Miz again. This time in an officially announced formal match for the World Championship. And then Michael Tarver and Heath Slater could basically do their own thing as tag team champions. I think it would make most sense for their Survivor Series storyline would be to be against the Hart Dynasty, given Bret Hart was one of the guys from that Team WWE SummerSlam match who was somewhat heavily involved in the in the early stages of the storyline. So having the Next Generation challenge them would make the most sense, and have them established not just against the older guys, but also within their own generation. And then the rest of Nexus, which would be Otunga, Gabriel, Sheffield, Harris, and McGillicuddy, will have a traditional 5-on-5 Survivor Series match against the rest of the team of Team WWE, which would be Orton, Edge, Cena, Bryan, and Morrison. Okay. Tarver and Slater end up successfully defend their titles. Team Nexus defeats Team WWE again, and this time this really is the final encounter. So Team WWE formally and fully disbands. And I think it would make most sense to have Otunga and Gabriel be the last survivors. And then in the main event, Barrett loses against The Miz. I've given the Miz the title earlier, and I want him to keep it for quite a while. And this second loss will open up the gate in order to give Otunga in order for Otunga to make a more official challenge for the leadership of the Nexus, which could take place at the next pay-per-view TLC, and would then have Otunga slated for a potentially for a world title match at Royal Rumble. And everyone else would just go ahead and do their go ahead and do their own thing for whatever reason. And yeah, that is my suggestion for how the Nexus should have been booked, more or less, between SummerSlam and Survivor Series. I hope you've enjoyed my suggestion. If you did, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If you have anything to add, either to the either to the initial storyline or to my or to my suggested rebooking, that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I talk about book-related and literature topics, a link to which you can find in the description down below, right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. Additionally, I also have a Patreon where you can support me, and depending on the level at which you pledge, you'll also receive a variety of different perks. What exactly those are, I will leave up to you to discover. If that doesn't interest you, then well, I can only suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want with the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was it. That was it for me. Until next time, I have been the One Take Man.